See, I think there are two ways in which people are controlled. First of all, frighten people, and secondly, demoralize them. An educated, healthy, and confident nation is harder to govern. And I think there's an element in the thinking of some people. We don't want people to be educated, healthy, and confident because they would get out of control.
Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN. Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
I feel less tired. That's what was missing, a conversation with you.
Well, here or anybody else out there who's willing to talk about stuff that other people aren't, I guess.
Yes,
that's what energizes some of us, I suppose.
Well, conversation energizes. Good, healthy.
Good conversation is, yes.
Yeah, energizes.
I agree.
Fingers crossed this will be a good conversation.
Oh, it always is. Come on.
Inshallah. So,
Inshallah.
thank you so much for joining me. And for anybody who's watching, I'll have the links to his Twitter in the description below. And subscribe, comment, like, share this video far and wide. I've been shadow banned on YouTube again. No, I've got a strike. I've got a strike on YouTube. So please come and support me. CryptoRich/CryptoRich Rumble, bit.ly/CryptoRich3Speak, bit.ly/CryptoRich Odyssey, my Twitter and my Telegram, and Faisal's Twitter in the description below. And what you and I have talked about, I think this is our third video, Faisal, is about Islamic eschatology, which is eschatology is the philosophy of transition. My understanding, right? Like,
I would call it transition into the final chapter, whatever that final chapter is, and how long that chapter lasts.
Yep.
Who knows?
Doing it through. So there's Jewish eschatology and Christian eschatology, and what you provide is an Islamic perspective, Islamic eschatology. And as Muslims, a very simple, crude explanation of Islam relative to Judaism and Christianity is Jews, they got the first book. The Christians got the second book, the Bible, and the Quran is the final say on the matter.
Yeah, it's sort of the simplistic view of it. Yeah,
it's a very simplistic view.
Yeah,
right?
But in Islam teaches that we are supposed to believe in all three of those books, not just our own. And so for me, what that means is if we are taught to believe in it, it means that we're being taught that there must exist truth in those books as well.
Yes.
And if those books contain truth and they're worthy of being read as well by Muslims, that means that they must teach things that perhaps Islam doesn't get into itself. Because Islam is an incredibly logical and rational religion. It wouldn't say, believe in the other stuff, believe in the other books as being the word of God if it didn't intend for us to expose ourselves to those books. So while I do primarily take the Islamic perspective on eschatology, I have also delved into Jewish and Christian eschatology just to fill in some missing pieces, or even discover if pieces are missing from the Islamic perspective. And when you do get into all three, I believe you get a much more fulsome and complete picture that I don't hear anybody else talking about, because I don't know anybody else who's gotten into all three.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you. And one thing I do want to say is that, for Muslims, we don't think that the Bible as it is the word of God. However, the stories within the Bible are in the Quran in broad terms.
Yes.
And we consider Jesus, peace be upon him, and Moses, peace be upon him, and many others as prophets as well.
Correct.
Moving on, we're going to talk about the run-up to the elections and who do you think is going to win and why? We're recording this on Wednesday, the 21st of August. And the DNC convention is still going on. Lots of fun and games because we've got Kamala Harris, the most popular, amazing, unbelievable, incredible, unpopular, unsuccessful primary delegate ever and VP ever, who's accomplished nothing, and she's trumping Trump. So
That's right. I think, is it Annalena Baerbock or is it Ursula von der Leyen who would say that she did a successful 360-degree pivot?
Yes. She absolutely did. I'm not sure if it was one of them, but I do remember that
I think it was Annalena Baerbock who meant to say like they did a 180 and she called it a 360, just illustrating how daft she is. But anyway, I've heard Alex Craner repeat that that quote a few times out of amusement.
Yes. Okay. So look, take it away.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, given that the foundation of my analysis for everything that's going on around us is the eschatological foundation, the eschatological perspective. That's what I use to try and educate myself on, or inform myself, I should say, on who ought to be the one who's winning this election. Not that U.S. politics is part of Islamic eschatology per se, but Islamic eschatology talks about a false messiah, and just applying. And like you've heard me say in previous conversations, I firmly believe that we are in an end times process right now, and that it's actually been going on for a very long time. It's just that we really feel it as human beings today because the process has picked up speed and intensity, and things are just becoming a lot more obvious to human beings in the last 5 to 10 years. So I believe we're in an end times process, and if there is to be a false messiah, and if the gambit of getting people to believe in this false messiah, embrace this false messiah, if that gambit is to succeed, then I believe that there has to be a lot of trickery that goes on, particularly targeted at Christians and Muslims, because we've been taught through our religions that we should expect a false messiah. So I don't think you can present a false messiah successfully with half the world's population, over 4 billion people, Christians and Muslims, already expecting a false messiah, sort of on the alert for it. So that's where the whole Trump phenomenon comes into play here, because I believe to trick, to deceive Muslims and Christians, you have to hang out in the open an individual, a character, who then appears to fulfill that role of the false messiah, so that when the false messiah actually is foisted onto humanity, Christians and Muslims will actually fall for that person. And then if we're to harmonize that with Judaism, you get into Jewish eschatology, and not all Jews necessarily believe this, but the ones that matter, so to speak, do believe it, that there are in fact two messianic figures in Judaism as well. Mm-hmm. So Jewish eschatology teaches that there are two messiahs, one who fails and then the one who ultimately succeeds, right? So both do beneficial things for the Jewish cause, but the first one fails. And so if the first one fails, I see that as a prime opportunity, hang out a deception for Muslims and Christians. I mean, I can see why people would listen to me and go, wow, that's really complex. How the heck do I figure it out? Which is why I took the time one night, quite a few hours. I think I went to bed at 5 a.m. after typing it all out on my phone, and I pinned it to the top of my Twitter profile page. I call it the Grand Unification Theory. And I partially did it for others, to help others, but I also did it for myself to be able to look back and reflect on where my head's been at and how my thinking might have needed to evolve over the course of time. But since putting that up on my Twitter page, I haven't amended any of it. I still stick with what I've written so far. And towards the end of that, I say, this is my thesis based on eschatology. This is how I think we can anticipate certain events to unfold. And the one event that I focused on was the election, the U.S. election. I said, okay, let me put myself out there and make a forecast or a prediction based on all that I'm saying. And I believe that Trump is being groomed as this, whatever, the failed messiah for Judaism, which, alternatively also plays the role of a false messiah, a decoy false messiah for the Muslims and the Christians.
Okay, let me get my head around this, right?
Yeah.
So Trump is not the false messiah. He's
No.
the false messiah.
Correct. Yes, or decoy false messiah.
Decoy, which makes him a sort of real, genuine messiah.
No, it makes it, well, you can't just take it as a double negative and say a double negative is a positive. What I mean by decoy false messiah is that there will be a false messiah, but you don't want people to think that individual is the false messiah, the ones who are anticipating a false messiah. So let's put out someone in advance of the actual false messiah and get people to see him as a messianic savior type figure who falls flat on his face before he can bring about all the promises of the true messiah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay. So so the idea is, what you're saying is that Trump is regarded as a messianic figure. We want to get people to regard him as a messianic figure.
Right.
He's not the false messiah, and he's going to fall flat on his face, meaning
Correct.
he can fail
Yes.
in what he's out to fulfill on. And
Yes.
then when the real false messiah comes along,
Yes.
then people won't go for that one because they'll think Trump is the false messiah. Is that
Yeah.
right?
So when the actual false messiah comes, people will be more prepared, willing to see him as the actual messiah, because they will have looked at Trump and said, well, the whole episode of the false messiah is behind us now. Whoever comes along as a savior figure is quite likely the real one.
Okay. So then the real false messiah comes along, and then people will think, okay, this is the genuine article, because Trump
This is Jesus Christ, in other words, right?
Right.
I mean, Jews won't see it as Jesus Christ, but Christians and Muslims will say, call him Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Okay, but the false messiah that's coming isn't the real messiah.
No. Correct.
Okay. So then Trump's role.
Yes.
Assuming so. Okay, so I'm going to take this into the domain of good and evil.
Yes.
You haven't taken it there. I'm taking it there just so I can get my head around.
Sure.
Then the false messiah is a force for evil.
Yes.
So then Trump's job, as you say it, is then to divert people to believe that the false messiah is evil.
No.
To follow the evil false messiah. That they'll think that the false messiah is real.
Yes. Correct.
Therefore, Trump is doing the work of evil.
Yes, but now that you've introduced the paradigm of good and evil, the false messiah should not be thought of as the Hollywood depiction of the Antichrist, where he goes around spreading evil around the world and doing all sorts of crazy, nasty things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The way it's taught in Islam is that he is the great deceiver. He will come about proclaiming and proclaiming himself to be Jesus Christ, the real Messiah. And in order to convince people that he is the real Jesus Christ, falsely, declaring that, he will try and mimic the things that Jesus Christ is promised to do.
Right.
Bring about peace, bring about prosperity, read the Bible and see what is promised when the Messiah returns. He is going to hold himself out as being that individual, Jesus Christ, who will do this for humanity. And then he does a bait and switch. So the evil, how does the saying go? How do you trap flies? You trap flies with honey, not with vinegar, right? So he's going to come out as honey, and then once he's got people under his influence control, trapped within his system, so to speak, then he'll flip the script and entrap us, and that'll be a bad thing to fall for that deception. So then the decoy false messiah would do something similar, but would not succeed at doing it. You know, he would try and pull off a very similar deception as, relieving humanity of the oppression that it's enduring, what Christians would call the tribulation, relieving humans of the stresses that come with tribulation through the tribulation period, and bringing about a sense of peace, perhaps even a renewed prosperity, advancing the whole Jewish cause with Project Zionism.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things are things that the decoy false messiah, Trump, in other words, would be working on, but he's going to have to fall flat on his face as well as part of the whole design, because if he were to fully succeed, then we would never look at him as a failed messiah, because what's prophesied is the false messiah fails. So if you want people to believe that this is a false messiah, you've got to set him up for failure as well. Now, coming back to the individual himself, I don't think Trump is necessarily an evil man. One might disagree with his politics, his personality, whatever.
But he's racist, and he's uncouth, and he sends out mean tweets.
And he might be all those things, but when I say he's the decoy false messiah, I don't think he's part of some dark, deep secret society, and he knows everything that's going on, and he's a puppet master. I think he's as much a puppet as the average person is in this whole affair. I think he's just got a deeply flawed character, which is his vanity and his ego, and it makes him very, very easy for manipulators to get him to play along. Not to play along, even just to be manipulated into fulfilling this role that needs to be fulfilled in order to trick all those that are actually expecting a false messiah. Right? So just you stroke his ego, and you can get him to do anything. And the reason I can recognize it so easily is because my dad was like that. My dad wasn't as notorious as a Trump, nor as financially successful as a Trump, but he was a character where you could give him a little bit of praise. You could sprinkle a little praise on his on the top of his head, and he would do anything that you wanted him to do. His direct family, his wife and his kids, never played him that way, because I guess we had just too much ethics to do it. But people around him used to do it all the time, and it used to aggravate my mother to no end. And once I grew up and started working in the family business, I saw the same thing. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Okay, let's take it back to Trump, right? So look, I can accept that Trump, either through intent or design or clumsiness or whatever, right, that the role that he's fulfilling is going to empower the false messiah, because people will, the false messiah that's going to come, because people will think that's the real messiah. They'll fall for that. But then this is what I find hard to stomach, is that those who oppose Trump, the talentless, empty, vacuous Kamala Harris, and the pedophile that she provided cover for all these years, and the mass murderer that is Barack Obama, and his wife Big Mike, complete fraud, that somehow they're the goodies.
That doesn't make them good, not at all. It makes them different actors in a grand evil game that's going on. So you've heard me say that what the Messiah is told, what we're taught that the real Messiah will do, and therefore the false Messiah will do, and therefore the decoy false Messiah will do, is relieve humanity of the oppression that it's enduring. So if Trump is the guy that's being set up to fulfill that role on a decoy basis for the false Messiah, these other guys that you just named, the Bidens, the Obamas, the Harrises of the world, Keir Starmer, Bojo, Macron, etc.
Sorry, Faisal, it's Keir Stalin. Don't miss
Keir Stalin, right? So my bad on the mispronunciation. These guys are just fulfilling other functions within this grand game that's going on. This game is, as I've tweeted out in the past, it's the It's the grandest iteration of the Hegelian dialectic that's ever been foisted upon humanity. So the roles that these other guys are playing outside of the Trump factor is to create that oppression, that demoralization. And this is why I said, I think I said it in our first conversation earlier this year when I was on vacation in South Asia and I had some alone time and I was thinking, I had the epiphany, boom, what if all of this is by design? That's what led me down this whole eschatological path to really uncover what religion has to say about all this. What if this is all by design, meaning all of this oppression, all of the anti-Semitism that we're witnessing, all of it is intended to advance the Hegelian dialectic that's at work. So, you can't relieve humanity of oppression without first oppressing them. So, and that's why it just seems so absurd, because you have to capture everybody's attention on the oppression that we face, not just the ones who stop and think and don't have their heads buried in the sand. You have to even get those guys who have their heads habitually buried in the sand to pull it out and go, wow, things are really screwed up, aren't they? So you're talking about, just pick it, irresponsible deficit spending, mass migration, gender fluidity, what else is out there?
Sexualization of children, destruction of the fruit supply, the demonization
of it, like medicine, everything, right?
The demonization of carbon dioxide.
Climate change. All of these different things, right? Get us to the point where we're so, the anxiety levels, the fear, the anger, whatever it is, however we negatively react, all of that is just amped up to the max. Not because there's an agenda to actually cut all the carbon out of the ecosystem, or because there's an agenda to take all children and flip them to the opposite gender or some new invented gender. Yeah, those people in the world exist who believe that needs to happen, but they're just pawns in this whole game as well. They've just pushed money in the direction of the crazy people and just said, go hog wild. And the masters of the universe, so to speak, are just sitting back. What I call Gog and Magog, and they're just saying, yep, just let it go nuts, and we'll step in when we need to step in, and we'll wipe away all of this oppression. And our agent that will play a big role in wiping out this madness will be Trump, and Trump will be then regarded by many people as, holy crap, maybe he's actually a messianic savior. And then you'll have Christians and Muslims and go, no, there's no way, because the first any messianic savior, and it can't be Trump, and we were always taught that there'd be a false Messiah. And then the rug will get pulled out from underneath Trump and he'll fall flat on his face. And then the Muslims and the Christians will go, I guess we were smart. I guess we knew not to believe in the first Messiah that comes along. See, everybody, we told you there'd be a false Messiah, and there he is.
Okay, and then along comes the real false Messiah, who people then regard as the real Messiah.
Yeah. So if we bring this back then to American politics and what lies in front of us, the American election, and not that long at all. How many weeks? Is it like
5 weeks?
What, 2 months away? 3 months away at the most now?
November the 5th.
November the 5th. So yes, November 8th. So we're talking 8 to 10 weeks, something like that, right?
No.
It's around the corner, literally. So if we were to talk about that and say, Faisal, make your prediction, I say, well, my prediction is I've already committed myself to saying that Trump is ordained to win this thing, because, and if I'm wrong on that, I don't take my whole eschatological view and throw it out the window. I just say, okay, I was wrong about Trump, but there's going to have to be someone that comes about who gets the rug pulled out from underneath him, who at first we look at being a possible savior figure who relieves us from a bunch of crap, and then falls flat on his face. And I only see one obvious candidate to fill that role today, which is why I'm saying what I say about Trump. But it's possible that I've missed something entirely and there's somebody else out there.
Yeah, there may be some factor you haven't considered.
Yeah, exactly.
Like your purview. But it could also be that this whole perspective that you're looking through could be invalid or being misapplied.
It's possible. Like, I'm not saying that I know I have knowledge, esoteric, secret knowledge that nobody else has. At best, I've got a very strong conviction in a belief system. And because it's a belief system, there's always the possibility that I'm going to be that I could be wrong. I don't think I'm going to be wrong because I keep stress testing it and analyzing it, and I'm very comfortable with what I've come up with here. But it's possible I could be wrong. I had a question on Twitter the other day. Whoever asked the question, well, if Trump loses, does that just delay everything that you're talking about, Faisal? And I'm like, no, I don't think so, because these guys, they're also playing to a timeline. And if Trump doesn't emerge as the decoy false messiah, well, then they're hard pressed to get somebody else, because they've got to get this stuff all wrapped up and done by, at the latest, 2030, at the very, very latest, 2030. I listened to a rabbi on YouTube who was recently talking about the redemption of Israel, meaning Israel the people and Israel the nation, has to happen by October 2026. I don't know how he comes up with these dates, but the rabbis have their books and their whatever, and they talk amongst themselves and they figure stuff out. But redemption for Israel by October 2026. I mean, there's no time left. It sounds like a long way away, 2 years away, but it's not. I mean, COVID was 4 years and it felt like the blink of an eye. So time is flying. There's
but while it was going on,
show's got to be on the road.
I just gotta say, when that whole COVID nonsense was going on, it felt like a very, very long time.
In the middle of it, it did. And then after we emerged from it, you look back and it's like, holy crap, was that just 4 years of my life that went by? And you're like, yep, it was.
Now, why 2030?
Okay, so we get into the real woo-woo stuff. This is where you start getting into the real woo-woo stuff. I had read, and I really wish I'd preserved the reference material so I could go back to it. I had read somewhere that these guys, these basically the Satanists of the world, they're working to a deadline of 2030 when their actual false messiah flips the script on humanity. Flips the script, or no, not flips the script, declares himself. Declares himself to be Jesus. So, for the uninitiated, it would appear that Jesus has arrived and declared himself, I have arrived. Whereas from the guys who are backing a false messiah, for them it's, he lands on earth, so to speak, and by sometime in 2030, he declares himself, I am Jesus, I am the promised messiah. Right. So that's where the 2030 comes from. And it lines up with so many other things like Agenda 2030 and so many other, what do you call those groups like the WEF, WHO, UN. They're not supranational. There's a word for it. I'm missing the word right now. All of those types of organizations, they've all been working towards some 2030 plan as well. And for me, the reason that 2030 keeps popping up is because it all ties into this satanic nonsense.
Right.
That's going on around us. Right.
I think also there are major astrological changes taking place.
We were chatting offline once, and you were talking about how the sun doesn't kind of move in a straight line through its orbit; it moves in a sinusoidal wave.
Now, the solar system, system. So what I remember from school is that the planets revolve around the sun in a plane. They might be in different planes.
Yeah.
And then the sun is stationary, but actually, the other way of looking at it, that what might be actually going on is that the sun is moving through space.
Yes. Yeah.
Planets are revolving around space, and it's kind of like a cone. But our solar system doesn't move through space in a flat line, but in a sinusoidal curve on the edge of the Milky Way. In the edge of the galaxy.
And so it sort of emerges above and then dips below through the cycle, and it's like a 12,000 year cycle?
Yeah. I can't remember, 12,000 or 24,000 cycle, right? But what happens? 12,000 ascending, 12,000 descending, and on May the 9th this year, it passed a particular point called M9, which is an astronomical measure, or it's on a map. It's an astronomical coordinate. And what that meant was that our solar system, so if you think of the galaxy as a plate, and you're looking at the plate edge on, and there's a lot of density here, because this is where all the other solar systems are, all the other planets and stars within the galaxy.
Yeah.
And then as our solar system moves above it, it then gets exposed to new energies and more energies from the center of the galaxy, more
Right.
forms of radiation, stuff that we don't know about,
Right.
is no longer being blocked by the density of planets in the thickness here.
Right. Yes.
And,
Now we recall. Yep.
and that the sinusoidal curve, I think, is 24,000 years.
In full. Yep.
24,000 in full arc, and then
Yep.
24,000 years down.
Yeah.
And as we go above, and some people are saying that this gives us new powers. It I don't know, it triggers the activation of dormant DNA and dormant chromosomes and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying this is true, by the way.
Yeah.
I suppose I'm not even saying what you're saying is true. What I'm interested in, or astrology or all the other stuff that I look at, is true. I'm interested in those perspectives, and like, let me try them on and look through them.
Yeah.
And then see what emerges. I'm willing to try on all sorts of ideas. And that's how I ended up home educating in Bitcoin and everything else I've done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it's fascinating. I find it really interesting. I would never take what you just said and disregard it, out of hand, because there's a lot of
if I can just continue, sorry, forgive me. But this whole idea of the sinusoidal curve and the changes fits in with the work of Graham Hancock. It fits with the Great Flood. It fits with the Hindu yuga cycles.
Yeah.
And now we're into Hindu philosophy, which for us as monotheists is just, whoa, don't go there, right? I would say Hinduism, much, much older, based on lots and lots of empirical data. I'm unwilling to dismiss it because it's such an old form of knowledge. Then if I dismiss it, then I'm not going to gain any value from it.
Correct. I'm the same way. I won't disregard anything out of hand, because I think there's a lot more out there than one individual could ever absorb by themselves or figure out by themselves. So there's no point in disregarding any of it. I don't say that everything out there has to be true. I think, there are things that are true and things that are not true. But we wouldn't think along certain lines if we just disregarded things out of hand. And what you're saying about the 12,000, or the 1/2, the 12,000 plus 12,000 year cycle that the solar system moves through, it might speak to the fact that, humans are starting to use their brains more actively. It might speak to this whole phenomenon of an amplification in what people are calling, what do they call it now? It used to be called UFOs. Now I think they're called UAPs, unidentified aerial something phenomenon, whatever. Yeah. So UFO activity, basically, which I don't think, I take the Islamic view on it that, Islam doesn't outright say there are no such things as aliens, but Islam talks about only 3 types of, outside of the animal kingdom, 3 types of key creations of God: human beings, jinn, in other words, demons, and then angel, right? And it goes into lengths describing these 3 things. So I tend to believe, and I watched an interesting lecture on this from a Muslim scholar the other day, that these UFO phenomenon that we're seeing in increasing frequency is just more of this demonic activity taking place. And it wouldn't surprise me if, one day somebody figured out that because the solar system has hit, what did you say, M9 position, that we are maximally exposed to whatever is coming from the center of the Milky Way galaxy. I don't know, but maybe that's what explains a lot of stuff.
Because M9 means we've just moved above the edge of the plate.
Oh, we're not even at maximum yet.
No, not yet. No, not yet.
Okay.
The ascending yuga, Dwapara, I don't know all the names, the Dwapara yuga and the descending yuga and stuff, right?
Okay.
I can't remember, just for clarity's sake, whether this is 12,000 years or this is 24,000 years. I think it might be 12,000 years, but if anybody wants to correct me, let me know in the comments below, and you can find out information about the yuga cycle.
How do you spell that word, yuga cycles?
What yuga? Y-U-G-A.
Oh, just yuga. Like, okay, like yoga with a letter U, not an O.
Yeah.
Yuga cycles. Okay, I'm gonna Google some of that tonight.
Yes. So and then the other thing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring it back to what's going on in the world currently, which is the other thing that I've been looking at is Vedic astrology and Western astrology. And Vedic astrology is astrology from Hinduism, from India.
Yeah.
It's thousands and thousands of years old, and I don't understand how it works. I did do a video with an astrologer, crypto astrologer, on my channel just to try and get my sense of it, and I'm not discounting it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm interested. Let's say I'm interested. I'm willing to keep looking at it and considering it. But then where the larger gaseous planets are, or where the constellation is of planets, very closely matches where they were in 1968, which was a year of massive disruption.
Mm.
And
Wow.
yeah, there were all the student riots. There was the demonstrations in France, and Martin Luther King got shot. Robert Kennedy got shot. Just lots and lots of turbulence and chaos.
And
And
was JFK shot in 68 or
Pluto
63?
was 63.
Oh, 63. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on a much larger scale, Pluto as a much as a slower moving planet
Yeah.
is going back to where it was. Like the planets are going to be aligning to where they were, or Pluto is back in 1776. So
1776.
76, around that time. So the Pluto,
Wow.
return, it's called,
Yeah.
in astrological circles. We're going back to that. And that's the time of revolution.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the United States is going to have a rejig, a revolution. So and on a personal level,
Yeah. Yeah.
a few weeks ago,
Mm.
by the way, I'm in conversation with this astrologer about her coming on my channel. A few weeks ago, my wife went and had a reading with a Vedic astrologer and who also does tarot. And
Okay.
she said to my wife, pick 3 cards from this tarot pack, hold them to your heart, and then turn them over one by one, or something. Or pick a pack, hold it to your heart, put it down, turn them over one by one. My wife did that. She picked 3 cards: Aries, the Sun, and another one which represents death. And then the Vedic astrologer said, you had somebody young, a young male, die.
Mm.
Now, our first son died over 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said other stuff to my wife about how it showed his death showed up in her chart. Then a
Wow.
couple of weeks, and other stuff that my wife told me is like, what? How does she know that? And then a couple of
Yeah.
weeks later, I WhatsApped this astrologer. She didn't know that I was married to somebody she saw. I'm married to somebody she saw recently.
Okay.
And I just arranged for a Vedic astrology reading.
Mm-hmm.
The first couple of minutes, she said
Yeah.
to me, are you married to so-and-so? And I said, yeah.
Wow.
How did you know?
Really?
Yeah, she goes, I said, how did you know? She goes, I can see it in your charts. Your charts match each other.
Oh my goodness.
And you
That's so she's worth her salt. She's not your
and
she's
you
not
had
your summer carnival astrologer who rolls in and
no,
out of town.
and
Wow.
you had a sun die, which is also in your charts in the same position apparently as in my wife's charts. And then she
Yeah.
said some other stuff. She said, you've got you've got a lot of opposition, but you're not phased by it. So
Just in general, you've got a lot of opposition.
yeah, like I stand for things
Yeah.
on my own. I get a lot of pushback and counter arguments, and I'm not in the least bit phased. I was the first person in my family, in my community, this generation to home educate. I'm a Punjabi that doesn't eat naan. I'm a Muslim that goes to Quaker meetings,
Yeah,
right?
right. That which is the weirdest thing I've heard so far
That's
from
right.
you.
You know, I discovered Bitcoin before anybody else in my community and
Yeah.
introduced them all to it. I'm a council official who never sent their kids to school. And then
Yeah.
I get lots and lots of pushback and counter arguments and disagreements from my friends and family, but I'm not phased at it at all. And then
Yeah.
I asked her, and I was like, yep, that fits. I'm on my own. I don't care. I don't need agreement because I'm pretty confident in what I've looked into.
Yeah.
And then I asked her, what do I do for a living? And she said, it's you remove children from situations of trauma.
Jeez. She could see that all from your
Said it's in your chart.
chart. That is incredible.
That is
That
like,
is truly
and then I
incredible.
said to her, I do child protection social work.
Yeah.
So I'm not discounting it. I don't understand it.
Mm.
I don't understand it. And there's more to discover than you and I know, like you said, right? I mean, I don't
Yeah.
understand a lot of what you say about eschatology, but I don't discount it. I'm
Yeah.
willing to consider and try it on because I think that's how we learn and grow, by trying on new ideas and being
Yeah.
willing to change our mind where necessary in light of new information. And I'm looking to see about getting this person on and see if we can do some videos together. But
Mm.
let's bring it back to Islamic eschatology.
Yeah.
And one last question, the current situation, because we have talked about Putin,
Yes.
the role that he's playing.
Yeah.
Because for me, I see him as a bulwark as a stop to the globalist agenda, the Great Reset agenda.
Yes.
And now with his invitation recently for people who want to escape from the
Great.
rising
Yeah.
tyranny in the West to come to Russia. I said to my wife, let's go to Dagestan. It's warm in Dagestan.
I told my wife the same thing yesterday or the day before. As soon as the thing came out, I brought it up over the morning coffee. And she's the one who said it first. She knew where my head was at. It's like, so you want to move to Russia? I'm like, I'm there. I'm ready. Let's do it. Let's do it. Forget the parents.
They've banned.
My mom would never move, and her parents would never. It's like, forget it. Drop all their social responsibilities.
My wife will never move. You know, they banned genetically modified food. They don't have GM foods in Russia.
Yeah, exactly. No, I've been watching Russia for a number of years.
Okay. Before we go off on that, just because I'm conscious of the time, right? So where does Putin fit in with regards to the false messiah and the decoy?
Yeah. So he fills a role that is prophesied in Islamic eschatology. The character's name is Dhul-Qarnayn. I think I may have brought him up in the first time we spoke. So Dhul-Qarnayn is a character that it's not like the Messiah where, he goes away in ancient times and then reemerges and reincarnates again in the future. This is just like, a second character who strongly reminds you of the first character. They're two separate people entirely. So anyway, Dhul-Qarnayn, translates, and you can interpret it to mean of two epochs, of two eras, a character who you will witness in this ancient time, this ancient story that's described in the Quran, and then you can expect him to emerge again, this type of character in the future. And the characteristics of this individual is he relieves humanity of not necessarily all of humanity, but within his circle, his sphere of influence, he relieves people of their oppression that they face, and his power emerges in the region of the Black Sea. And it's built on a foundation of tremendously deep and strong faith in the one true religion, which is submission to the will of God. So, if we were to look at any individual in the current era who might fulfill such a role, Putin is the only one who emerges as such type of individual. And this is the reason that I say that the conflict that's happening in Ukraine is intimately linked to what's happening in Israel. Because I cannot have been the first person to figure this thing out about Dhul-Qarnayn. The scholars that I've listened to, who I've learned about this stuff from, they can't have been the first in all of human history. These scriptures, these texts have been around for centuries, if not millennia. And I have to believe, I'm compelled to believe that people long before us, scholars long before us, have figured this type of thing out. And that's why Russia has always been in the crosshairs of what I call Gog and Magog, so primarily seated in the UK, because they realize that in their grand agenda, Russia emerges as the strongest bulwark against their project, which is Project Pax Judaica. And there's all sorts of economic and geopolitical and geostrategic analyses you can do and say, of course, the old colonial imperialist empire of Britain would target Russia, because look at all their resources, look at their landmass, look at the trade routes that this, that, the other. There's a million different ways to dissect it and analyze it. And I'm not saying that any of those vectors of analysis are wrong, but I say that secondary, tertiary, quaternary to the primary motivation for dismantling Russia and targeting Putin is because the scriptures say that your big project, one of the biggest stumbling blocks to fulfilling your project of Pax Judaica is going to be Russia, the Eastern Orthodox Church, and a character that Islam describes as Dhul-Qarnayn.
Dhul-Qarnayn.
Dhul being spelled D-H-U-L. Yep. Dhul, and then Qarnayn, Q-A-R-N-A-I-N, Qarnayn. So Qarn in Quranic Arabic can take on two different meanings. It's a homophone. It's a word that has two meanings. One is horns. So amateur scholars will say, well, we're looking for a character who has two horns, kind of like a Viking with his hat on sort of idea, which is absolutely idiocy, because every other instance of the word Qarn in the Quran translates to era or epoch.
Right.
So dhul meaning two or double. I can't remember exactly the translation. It means of two epochs, not of two horns.
Okay. Okay, well, bringing it back to Trump, right? I take it that
Yeah.
what you're saying, Trump is going to win the November election.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe, and like I said, I stand to be corrected, but that doesn't throw out my whole thesis. It just means that the way I've analyzed it needs to be reopened.
Yeah. And I suppose like any scientist or philosopher, you have an idea, there's what's happening in the world, and then we're mapping that idea, that philosophy onto events in the world and seeing how it shapes out.
Yeah.
Making it
one thing that reinforces my thought that he's ordained to win is, I mean, what happened ever since the assassination attempt? He looks like he's stopped campaigning entirely. It's almost as if he's given up and just wants to lose, which I don't believe to be the case, or that he's like, I don't need to do anything. I'm the chosen one, man.
No, he's still doing rallies, Faisal. He's still doing rallies.
Is he? Okay. I see him so little all of a sudden.
Yeah, he's now back on Twitter, so you can follow him on Twitter as well as on Twitter. And there are some Twitter accounts which just retweet the stuff, that repost the stuff that he posts on Truth Social. He's still doing rallies. But the thing that might fit what you're saying is that he moved his head. The bullet missed his head by a tiny fraction. That's incredible. That's, and then for people of faith who are followers of Trump, that could look to them very easily like divine intervention.
Well, that's the big buzz that came out of it, right? So my first reaction to the whole thing was, oh, that's just theater, which then, was a very irresponsible use of words, because, I could have been a little bit more articulate by what I meant, because the first thing you think when you hear Faisal say, oh, that's all theater, was that it was all staged. Trump knew it was going to happen. And he said, yeah, shoot at me and I'll move my head. And that's not at all what I meant. I meant that, and again, this is where we get in deep into the woo-woo, that, Gog and Magog, while I say that they're human beings, they're not alone in this grand project. There is the unseen factor to our existence, which more people are waking up to, the Tucker Carlsons and the Joe Rogans and many other people of the world. And, my view on the whole assassination attempt, which was July 13th or 12th, I can't remember, was that, there was an unseen hand behind him, but I don't think it was the hand of God. I don't think God plays. Imagine life, the entire known universe, every aspect of life, call it a board game, right? That was created by some brilliant master designer, master architect, who's created this wonderful, complex, stunning in its elegance once you start pulling it apart and figuring out how it works. I just cannot see, I refuse to accept that the architect, such a brilliant architect, would, after having created the game, jump in on a regular basis and play. I think he would just sit back and go, let's see what happens.
I can get, if this massive, incredible design, the entire cosmos, and I'll just dip right in here, right? This tiny bit part player, throughout the kind of time and space, and tweak his head a little bit. But I get it.
It seems ridiculous to me, but
I did.
Everything we see is not all that exists, right? There are the unseen things as well. And if you believe, let's say you're right, it was the hand of God. God reached down and turned his head. Well, if you're willing to believe that God exists and is an unseen force, then the dualistic nature of existence, of reality, good versus evil, night versus day, up versus down, left versus right, so to speak, right? If good exists, then evil exists. And if an unseen good exists, an unseen evil could also exist, should also exist, necessarily has to exist. So what says that it had to be the hand of God, the actual grand architect of the whole game that we're playing? Wouldn't it be one of the other sentient beings that is described in the religious scriptures? Because these beings are sentient, they have free will. They just don't necessarily have to, because of free will, they don't necessarily have to do good things. They can do bad things as well, just like humans can. Humans have the ability to exercise their willpower on either good things or bad things. So I think there's, co-conspirators in this whole thing, and this is where I lose most of the audience. So it's like, oh boy, here he goes. But I think we're going to come about to it. I think people are going to finally come around to realizing that, yep, the world is just way weirder than we ever were prepared to accept and admit. And I think, going back to your yuga cycles, if we are exposed to energies and frequencies and radiation and whatever that we were shielded from before in the past, and we're being bombarded by these things, I think you were going to see more of this UFO phenomenon. I think you were going to have more people asking questions, what the heck is it all about? And I think the Tucker Carlsons and the Joe Rogans of the world are going to gain a little bit more confidence in saying the things that they're holding themselves back from saying today.
Yeah, there is. I think there's definitely going to be more sightings and stuff. And the thing that I don't know, I'm not saying, because also there are people saying, oh, this is just a psyop. And there's Bluebeam where they're able to, project these holographic images and convince us, right? And yes, it could be that. I don't know. It could also be that the UAPs, UFOs are real, and they're saying it's a psyop as part of their psyop. So that we don't know. So like I said, the world is weirder than we can ever get our head. And then soon we're going to have monkeypox to entertain us, it looks like.
Oh, so my big frustration with monkeypox is people are talking about it. Just ignore it. Don't even utter the word, because then it doesn't become part of the zeitgeist, right? It's like, we understand why we're talking. We're not talking about it like we were in the early days of COVID necessarily. Now we're talking about it like, oh, here they go again. But if we just didn't even talk about it, just ignored it, it just never could take a life of its.
No, because they're going to talk about it. They're going to push it. And by talking about it the way that I'm going to talk about it, is to wake people up. Don't be you had the mRNA injections with COVID. Don't take the ones for this one. The PCR test is a flawed test, not for diagnostic purposes. Don't go and check to see if you've got asymptomatic monkeypox. You might as well have asymptomatic leprosy.
Yeah, right.
Asymptomatic plague.
Yeah, the whole asymptomatic thing. My goodness, how we felt.
Asymptomatic death. Okay. Faisal, thank you. Shukran.
Yes, you're most welcome. Thank you as well for entertaining the discussion that so few people are willing to.
Yes, well, I really do appreciate it. It's like, there's a lot to be learned from what you're saying, from what others are saying. So don't discount anything. Explore, question, inquire, and I'll have your Twitter in the link below. And
perfect.
Also, my links, and I'm going to check with the astrologer if I can put her email if people want to go and check her out. I don't know if she will, so if she'll agree.
But you were talking about maybe bringing her on and interviewing her as well, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to watch that episode. Yeah, that's
you should watch all my episodes. Right. All right.
All right.
Thank you so much, everybody. Stay awake, love, and honor all people.
There you go. Thanks, Rich.
All the best. Bye-bye.